You're listening to Grown and Growing with Sonia Hamlin. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me for another episode. And if you're new to the podcast, welcome. I am doing another solo episode. I did one last week on friendships. Hopefully you checked that one out. And I'm following it up with another solo episode. And this one, I'm giving credit to my Monday morning meditation crew, Kia, Danielle, and Danielle, for really inspiring the topic for this episode. Monday morning meditation is something I started in January, kind of as a challenge to myself to practice more mindfulness, to learn more breathing techniques, and it kind of stuck. And I still do it on Monday mornings at 7 a.m. from 7 to 7:30. This episode was inspired by a conversation that I had during one of those sessions when I was sharing with the people on the call that I feel like I'm going through a season of change. And so I'm talking about how I'm going through it, how I'm dealing, with being, in this, aspect of my life. And they were like, oh my God, this should be a podcast episode. And so here we are. So thank you, Monday morning meditation crew, for inspiring me to tap into this episode. There was also another thing that they shared with me that I was kind of surprised about. They said that they actually prefer my solo episodes to interviews. Like they like both, sure, but they like my solo episodes a little bit better, which is, nice to hear, because when I am sitting in front of a microphone by myself, there is a level of vulnerability that it takes to continue to talk into the mic and just kind of talk to yourself and nobody's answering back. I think I like the balance of having interviews because it allows me to banter with somebody else. It, in all honesty, takes the spotlight off of me and it allows me to converse with someone and ask questions and get curious with another person. But I definitely appreciate people who think, I am enough. I just step on the mic and you guys like it. And I am happy about that. So if you feel the same way, let me know. I would love to hear, your feedback and what you think. I'm going to start this episode off by acknowledging the passing of Tina Turner, formerly known as Anna Mae Bullock. She passed away last week. And if you were like me and probably most people around the world, you probably went down a Tina Turner rabbit hole, just kind of reflecting on everything that she brought to the field of music and who she was as a person who kind of personified resilience, perseverance, self-reliance, and confidence. She basically lived two lives, at least from what we could see in the public. She lived her life with Ike, which was very traumatic and abusive. And then she lived the second part of her life without Ike. And she was able to kind of transform herself into something that we had never seen in the most admirable way. Now, admittedly, I'm not the biggest Tina fan. I think Oprah has declared herself the biggest Tina fan, which is fine. Oprah can have it. But I've always admired her career, her longevity. My mom was a big Tina fan. And I think I told this story on the podcast before. My mom bought her book, I, Tina, back in the day. And this is a little side note. Did you guys know that Kurt Loder from MTV helped write that book with her? Like the dude that does MTV News was also writing Tina's biography. Who knew? I actually found that out in the documentary that came out in 2021. Anyway, I was in the 6th grade and I used to sneak out in the middle of the night and take that book from my mom and read it without her knowing under the covers, or I would sneak to our living room and I would read it on the couch into the evening. I was in the 6th grade, so I don't know how much appreciation I have for her story, but I did. It was the first adult book that I've ever read. Then I was in the 8th grade when What's Love Got to Do with It hit theaters. So I saw it, but those moments obviously didn't hit like it does now when I'm reflecting on her life at my big age of 45. Tina was basically in her 40s when she decided to rightfully leave Ike with only her name. And she decided to really just bet on herself. She became, against all odds, mind you, a rock and roll star in her 40s when everything was stacked against her. She became exactly what she wanted to become. She evolved into the person she always wanted to be. When I think about the qualities that Tina Turner embodied to take back her life and become the queen of rock and roll, right? You think about perseverance, evolution, resilience, the refusal to dim your light. Those are the same attributes that really prompted me to start the Grown and Growing podcast. This podcast is for women like Tina who want to continue to grow and evolve in their lives. They may be one thing now, and they might want to evolve into something else. And that's completely okay. Now, you don't have to be in a bad or abusive relationship like she was. You can just want something different for yourself, even if it's the smallest thing. And it's never too late to become the person you've always wanted to be, to do that thing you've always wanted to do. And I truly believe that. I do have a friend, though, who always challenges me on this. She likes to bring up examples where it may be biologically or physically impossible for a person to do something. And I admit, there are some things that are impossible to do. But what I think is the spirit of that comes from what you want to do, the feeling that you would get from doing that thing. I feel like you can capture those same feelings doing something similar or adjacent to that original thing that you want to do. I think it's important to channel that energy in a different way. Maybe you can't biologically have a baby, but there are many ways to become a mother and impact a child's life. You can adopt. There are technologies now that help women conceive. Or maybe you don't want to have a child, but you want to be the person to bring life into this world. So maybe you can become a doula and help usher life into the world through many women. I think that it's important to not so much focus on the act itself, the A and the B, and I must do it this way. But what are the feelings that you would get from doing that thing? What does it fill you up with? And is there something adjacent to that thing that you can do that would give you the same feelings? You may not be an Olympic swimmer or a sprinter, but maybe there's a way that you can compete in, locally that'll give you that same sense of accomplishments. I feel like the more that you narrow the possibilities or put yourself in a box, of course you'll think those things are impossible because you have decided that they are, because you won't expand your mind and think about other ways to accomplish something similar. Because ultimately, it is about accomplishing that thing, but it's also the feeling that you get when you're doing it and when you've done it that you most remember. And I feel like you can capture those things in other ways. Also, I'll say this. If there's something that you want to achieve and you know that timing is an issue, timing is a concern, then there's no better reason than to start today. I just wanted to take this moment to reflect on Tina's life and the impact that she's made. So this episode is obviously not about Tina, but her story does align perfectly with what I want to discuss today. And that is being in a season of change. Have you ever gotten the feeling that something in your life is about to change? Like there's this feeling or this sense that your life is about to evolve in some way. And sometimes you may know exactly what is about to change because you see signs and you know this thing is about to change. Or you know change is afoot, but you can't exactly pinpoint what or how it will happen. You just feel like, wow, it's coming. What do you do in those moments? I feel like I'm living in one of those moments right now, right? I feel like there's something in my life that is evolving that needs to change. I feel it coming. And I was thinking about often, like, how do I want to approach this change in my life? It's very rare that all of the aspects will line up. Your personal, professional, physical, spiritual life all lines up so that everything is in a good place. It's either your, work life is going well and your home life is shit, or your professional life is going great and your home life is, chaotic. Change, no matter if it's good or bad or anticipated or not, it's stressful. It can leave me asking questions like, okay, how is this change going to uproot my life? Is it going to alter my routine? Is it going to change my relationships? Is it going to impact my finances? Is it going to shift who I am, what I think, what I believe? The younger version of Sonia would dive right in and try to control the narrative. Like, all right, I see this change is coming. Boop, 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 boop. I'm about to jump into action and try to change everything I can, to try to control everything I can. I would want to hurry up and initiate the change, quickly move through the uncomfortable parts and get to the other side. Like that's how I dealt with change in my life. Older me knows better and knows that it's not that simple. I'm in a place in my life where changes can feel a little bit more consequential. Like it's not just me out here changing stuff and it's all willy-nilly because it only impacts me, so it's fine. I'm older. I have a husband. I have kids to consider. There's a mortgage. There's a retirement that I have to think about. There's my mental and physical and spiritual health. And maybe you're like me and you have other obligations as well. Maybe it's your parents or other family members. There's just a lot more to consider. So when your life changes, there are a lot of implications. And also, let's not forget, where there is change, fear might also be along for the ride. And with fear, it brings all sorts of doubts, insecurities, what ifs, all to the surface for you to contend with. So now that I have this feeling that like I'm in a evolving period of my life, I've decided that I want to approach change differently now. I don't want to charge forward and devise a plan for every possible outcome. And I know that's impossible, right? I know that, but it doesn't keep me from trying. Like old me would have been like, okay, if this happens, then this happens. If this happens, I'm going to do this. But I don't want to exert control and try to bend the universe to my favor. The thought of that is, quite frankly, exhausting. I want to worry less and be at peace more. So what am I doing to ensure that I stay peaceful, mindful? Because life be lifing, and it gets tough. It gets tough. You start to worry. And like I said, fear sets in, anxiety sets in, and then all of a sudden you're kind of tail spinning. I don't want that. But being peaceful is not my normal MO. It's not my factory setting. Like that's not how I was seemingly made. So it does take work for me to maintain a level of peace in my life. So what have I started to do? What have I learned about myself and what have I implemented? Instead of getting busy, I get quiet. I believe that when you're quiet, you're better able to discern the voice of God. There are a million voices in your head, talking in your ear. And sometimes it's hard to hear God. In fact, I think when there's a lot of chaos going on, I feel like he whispers so that you can purposely get quiet so that you can discern his voice amongst all the other voices in your head and in your heart and in your ear. And getting quiet means exactly that. It's like making more time for prayer, taking walks with no earphones, even taking showers with no music or no podcast. That's what I do. And sometimes taking them in the dark because I feel connected. I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes I do that. This is a time where I just hear God and I just listen. To me, that is calming and that is reassuring. So that's the first thing that I do. I'm like seeking out to hear God more. The second thing is I break out my journal. I think I've said this before, but I'm not a journal everyday type of person. I'm not sitting down, writing down everything that happened today. Like, dear diary, today I did blah, blah, blah. I don't do that. I mostly write when there are big changes or big things happening in my life. So if you go back and flip through the journal that I keep, you'll see all of the high and low points of my life because I write about them in there, positive and negative. It helps me get all of the thoughts, worries, and fears out of my head onto a piece of paper. It is also an opportunity for me to envision what I want to happen, to write down what I want to happen. This is happening right now. This is what I would like to happen. It allows me to write down who I want to be and how I want to feel on the other side of this thing, what I would like to get out of it, which has been very helpful. One thing that my coach taught me to do and that we practiced a lot was reframing my thoughts, right? Not focusing on the negative or focusing on the, what's possible, but kind of reframing my thoughts and reframing even the way I spoke about things so that they looked different, they felt different, and it didn't always lean on the side of negative. So writing in my journal is something that I also do. The next thing I want to talk about is gratitude and reflection. Yes, I know that it is good to express gratitude at all times for everything that you have, to just stay in a state of gratitude. I get that. But when I'm going through what I feel like is a change in my life, I don't use gratitude as a mechanism to be able to keep things as they were or to kind of avoid change. Like, see, God, I am grateful for all these things. So therefore, you should not take them from me or you should not change them because I am grateful. That's really not what I'm using it for, but I use it as a reminder that sometimes things fall apart, but there is always restoration. So when I'm thinking about the things that I'm grateful for, I think about how I got those things, how those things came to pass. And a lot of times things had to change. Something had to die. Something had to shift in me for me to get to this point. And if I am expressing gratitude for it, that means like something had to happen to get me to this point, and it's positive. It's a reminder to me that God is always in control and he always has me. Whether I know the outcome or not, sometimes the outcome is not even what I thought it would be, but God always has my best interest at heart. It's also a reminder when you're thinking about and reflecting on what you're grateful for, that sometimes you have to let go of what is to make room for what's to come, to make room for what you're becoming. The last thing I'm going to talk about is probably the hardest thing for me to do, which is to sit in the discomfort. It is always easier for me to want to hurry up and rush through the feelings, like hurry, 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 feel it, feel it, feel it. I feel bad. Who wants to sit in feeling bad, right? I want to get through the feelings and get on the other side as quickly as possible. But sometimes your feelings aren't aware that you're on a timeline and things come up and you really do need to sit with them. Why are you feeling this way? Is it a valid feeling? What does it mean? And kind of sit with that discomfort. It's something that I'm trying to get better at. It's also something that I'm trying to teach my kids. Like, what are you really feeling? Like, identify the feeling. Like, you can only discard a feeling or move on from a feeling once you've acknowledged it and addressed it and been able to vocalize exactly what you're feeling. And that's hard for me. Sitting in discomfort is hard, and I don't want to kind of go through all my feelings, but it's necessary. I wish that obtaining peace was as easy as set it and forget it. I wish I could just go and set it and say, I'm at peace now and I'm going to be at peace forever. But like I said, my go-to is to worry, overanalyze, and try to control the situation to the point where it's in the past has taken a toll on my physical health, right? But I have to work hard not to revert back to my old ways of thinking and being. It is important for me to be mindful and intentional. It takes practice to bring myself back to center and to calm my fear so that I'm able to make good decisions and kind of plot and plan out next steps. And yes, I do believe you can still plan and be strategic in the midst of change, but there's the difference of when you are forcing something to happen and forcing an outcome versus making decisions that kind of go with the flow and kind of align with the direction that you're going and being able to kind of pivot when necessary. I also want to share this quote that I once heard from the founder of the Curvy, Curly, Conscious Collective. It's a lot of C's. Sheila Marie. I heard her say this affirmation once and I never forgot it. I actually have it written in my office. It says, I invite excitement and peace into my life. So you may think that excitement and peace are two opposite ends of the spectrum, but it's okay to want an exciting life. It's okay to want an exciting life and to want a peaceful life. These two things can coexist. And when she said that statement, that was the first time that I realized, wow, these two things can exist. And you can have an exciting life, whatever that means for you, and also maintain a level of peace. And that is what I want for myself. I want to be able to embrace new possibilities and have new experiences, but also maintain a level of peace. So there are times in your life when you can see signs that change is coming, like change is imminent, and you can see the signs. There are red and yellow flags all along the way. You start to see shifts in the dynamics of your relationships, your job that seems so engaging and exciting is not as it used to be, right? Maybe it was fun and exciting and now it's stressful and hard to go in. Your clothes don't fit like they used to, or you don't feel your best anymore. These are all little signs that you see that you're either going to have to make a change or that a change is coming. And if you're paying attention to the signs, you can kind of start to adjust with the change in your life. You can start to have conversations. You can start to look for other jobs or ask for help or get in therapy or whatever you need to do to kind of help you work through the change that you anticipate coming. And just try to go with the flow of the change as much as possible. But there are also changes in life that you don't see coming and that can completely throw you off your kilter. They're so abrupt and disruptive that you feel like you're kind of scrambling to kind of keep everything from falling apart. So there are also ways I think that, when things like this happen, like maybe you're going through a divorce or you find out something shocking about your partner or you get sick or the death of someone you love. Like these things are unexpected, can happen in unexpected ways. And it's important that when the unexpected happens, you kind of slow down and take it one day at a time. And I know it's easier said than done, but this is when being intentional and mindful comes into play. So when the unexpected happens, I think the first thing that you should do is take care of your mental and physical health as best you can. I think that it's no different than the being on an airplane and putting your own mask on before anyone else. It's the same. You need to make sure that your cup is full before you can kind of deal with everything else. And sometimes it's not even that your cup has to be full, like get the cup halfway. Like just make sure the cup is not on E. basically, as best as you can when you're going through a difficult time. The other thing I'll say is ask for help, ask for support. Being able to communicate with people you trust and you love and, asking them for their help and their support while you're going through this difficult time is so helpful. Like, people want to help. People want to support you. At least those who love you do. And you reaching out and asking for their help is a burden off of you. You don't have to be forced to be the strong woman trying to hold up everything as things kind of fall apart around you. The next thing I'll say is acknowledge. Acknowledge that this thing has happened, that this change has happened. I know some people who stay in denial for a very long time. Like, they don't want to deal with it. It is not happening. What they see is not real. And they just live in this state of denial. Denial only delays. It does not make everything go away. So eventually, you're going to have to confront the thing that is in front of you. And I think acknowledging that something has happened and being real about how you feel about that is a huge step to healing and adjusting. This next thing that I have here is actually something I learned from Kia. I didn't really know what it was all about until she mentioned it, but it's called grounding yourself. So I've always tried to find ways to ground myself. I just didn't know that it was called grounding. When life gets crazy all around you, it helps to try to find stability in an increasingly kind of unstable world that you're living in. So this could mean taking walks, stretching, taking yoga, doing breath work, using aromatherapy, walking barefoot in the grass, which is something I was just introduced to because I kind of have a phobia of grass and I never want to walk in it or touch it because I'm afraid of dog poop. And so it's irrational. I get it. Actually, it's not irrational because people have a lot of dogs, especially where I live. And I don't like poop. But getting over that, going in my backyard where I know there are no dogs and walking in the grass is a nice cooling sensation, and it's supposed to ground you. It felt great, but just finding whatever works for you to bring some stability into your life. The last thing, and what I'll ultimately say is probably the most important thing, is give yourself some grace. You won't get it all right. I don't get it all right. Extending yourself grace, not being hard on yourself, forgiving yourself is something that'll take you a long way. You don't have to be perfect. And another thing I'll say too, if you're supporting somebody going through some changes in their life, give them grace, right? Give them grace. They may not get everything right. They may not return all your phone calls. They may not be there for you like they used to, but give them some grace, allow them to, reach out to them if they're not reaching out to you. We can do that a lot more for each other in addition to ourselves. When I think about change, I think a lot about that quote that says, the only thing that's constant in life is change, meaning we're always evolving. We're always changing. But it is your response to those changes and kind of who you are going through it and who you are in its aftermath that is the most important. Thanks for listening, and until next time.